Hope you are all doing good. This is class 12 physics, chapter 11, dual nature of radiation and matter. Let me introduce the chapter. As the name says, matter and radiation shows two behavior. You know that radiation is energy itself, and the visible part of this radiation is light. There are other types of radiations as well, like ultraviolet radiation, gamma rays, X-rays, and so on. You have learned about some optical phenomena like reflection, refraction, diffraction, interference, and polarization in ray optics and wave optics. All these phenomena could be explained well by considering light as a wave. But there are some other phenomena which could not be explained completely by considering light as a wave, like photoelectric effect, Compton effect, and blackbody radiation. So how could you explain all these phenomena exhibited by light? Not by considering light as a particle or as a wave alone. So what is the true nature of light? In this chapter, we'll see photoelectric effect in detail, which proves that light is both particle and wave. The wave-particle duality of radiation as well as matter is explained in this chapter. The various topics we discussed today are history of electron, different types of electron emission, and photoelectric effect. There are many theories put forward to study the nature of light. Some famous theories are, so the first theory was proposed by Sir Isaac Newton, which is the corpuscular theory. So according to this theory, see, light is actually made up of tiny particles, elastic particles called corpuscles, which travels in a straight line. And by considering light as these corpuscles, Newton could explain reflection and refraction, and also the rectilinear propagation of light. But this theory could not explain diffraction, interference, and polarization. So that theory was discarded. Later, Christian Huygens proposed the wave theory of light. So according to Christian Huygens, light is not a stream of particles, but instead it propagates in the form of waves. And the type of wave, there are two types of wave, longitudinal and transverse. And according to him, light is a longitudinal wave. And we know that for a longitudinal wave to travel, a medium is required. We know that light even can travel even without a medium, even through vacuum it can travel. This theory could well explain the phenomena like diffraction, interference, and polarization. But still, it could not explain photoelectric effect, Compton effect, and blackbody radiation like that. So that theory also could not explain light completely. Then came electromagnetic theory proposed by James Clerk Maxwell. So according to him, light is an electromagnetic wave. Light consists of both electric and magnetic fields which are perpendicular to each other, and the light propagates in the perpendicular direction to both electric and magnetic fields. Okay, that means if electric field is in the x direction and magnetic field is in the y direction, the propagation is in the z direction. But this theory also could not explain photoelectric effect completely. Then proposed the famous quantum theory in modern physics, the quantum theory of light, which was proposed by Max Planck in 1900. So according to him, light is not traveling as a continuous form of wave or continuous energy of wave. Instead, light travels, or light is made up of packets of energy, discrete packets of energy. And these packets of energy, he named it as a quantum of radiation or a quantum of light. Or it is also called, since it is related to light, we call it as photon also, or wave packet. So this proposal by Max Planck actually revolutionized the nature of light. An important step that happened in the early 20s is it discovered that light is both wave and particle, which seems very impossible. But thanks to Albert Einstein and Max Planck, that now we know that light sometimes can behave like a particle and sometimes it can behave like a wave. That is, light shows this wave-particle duality. By this concept of wave-particle duality, we can explain almost all the phenomena exhibited by light. And let us see in this chapter how this theory of duality, that is wave-particle nature of light, how this can explain the photoelectric effect well. So for that, we should go back to the history of electron. Electrons were discovered by J.J. Thomson in 1897, and the discovery of electron actually started with the discovery of cathode rays by William Crookes in 1870. For all these experiments, they are using a discharge tube. A discharge tube looks like this. It consists of an evacuated glass tube with two electrodes, two metal plates acting as the electrode. One is cathode and another is anode. They are given the potential difference with the help of a battery. So what William Crookes had observed is that there is a glow towards which is moving from the cathode to the anode. So since this radiation started from the cathode and moves towards the anode, he named these rays as cathode rays. And later he found that, he also suggested that these cathode rays are negatively charged particles by again verifying with some other experiments. And J.J. Thomson confirmed this hypothesis that these charged particles are negative and they are cathode rays. That means some rays are coming from the cathode in a discharge tube, which gives that fluorescent glow or the discharge. That was confirmed by J.J. Thomson. Not only that, he was the first person to calculate the speed of these cathode rays and the famous charge to mass ratio or the E/m ratio. And this ratio is a constant. It is 1.76 into 10 raised to 11 coulomb per kilogram. Various experiments were performed by scientists around that time and by using different metals and by irradiating the one of the plate cathode by UV rays, they found this emission of negatively charged particles from the cathode, and from that they calculated the E/m ratio, which J.J. Thomson had calculated. So there are different types of experiments performed by using different metals and under different circumstances, but the E/m ratio is found to be the same. What does that mean? E/m ratio does not change with the nature of the emitter electrode or the gas filled in the discharge tube. Whatever be the material of the emitter or whatever be the gas, whatever be the different conditions for the experiment, still E/m ratio is found to be the same. Later, in 1897, J.J. Thomson named these particles as electrons. So these negatively charged particles are named as electrons by J.J. Thomson, and he was awarded Nobel Prize for this discovery of electrons as well as the E/m ratio. 1906, he was awarded Nobel Prize. Then R.A. Millikan in 1913 wanted to calculate the charge on an oil droplet. So he performed the famous oil drop experiment by Millikan in 1913. So the aim is to calculate the charge of this electron. And he found out that charge on an oil droplet is an integral multiple of an elementary charge. Whatever be the body, whatever be the charge on the body, if you calculate that charge, we get it as an integral multiple of an elementary charge. This elementary charge is nothing but the electron, the charge of the electron. This is called the quantization of electric charge. So quantization of electric charge means the charge on any body is an integral multiple of the elementary charge, that is the electron. So electric charges are quantized. That is actually found out by R.M. Millikan. We'll move on to the next topic, emission of electrons. What is the relation between the photons and electrons? So we have seen how electrons were discovered, and electrons are emitted from the surfaces under certain circumstances, certain conditions. Or how can you get these electrons from the metal surface? Now let us see that. What is the peculiarity of metals? They are conductors, right? How they get that conductivity? They get that conductivity because of the presence of free electrons. And we know that these covalent electrons, these free electrons, cannot come out of the metal surface as such. What could be the reason? The reason is simple. If it tries to come from the surface of the metal, equal positive charge will be developed on the metal surface. So this positive ion and the electron experience a greater attractive force, so that this electron is held back to the metal surface, right? So the electrons as such cannot come out of the metal surface, because of the strong attractive force between the electron and the positive ion, as well as the potential energy of the system, which you have learned in electrostatics. Now the question is how we can eject these electrons out of the metal surface. So there are different ways by which we can eject these electrons out of the metal surface. We know that we have to supply some amount of energy, some additional energy to the electrons to overcome this force of attraction within the metal. Is it? This minimum amount of energy is to be given to the electrons so that they can break the bond and come out of the metal surface. And this minimum energy required for the electron to come out of the metal surface is called work function, and it is denoted by phi naught. The work function is denoted by phi naught. So work function is defined as the minimum amount of energy required to pull an electron from the metal surface, and this work function is measured in electron volt, which is mainly we use in atomic physics and all. So this formula, are you familiar with this formula? This is same as which you have learned in electrostatic. Work done is equal to Q into V, where Q is the charge and V is the potential applied. So here, what is the charge? The charge is nothing but the electron and the potential which is provided, electron volt. Now how can you define 1 electron volt? Electron volt is the unit of work function, and it is said to be 1 electron volt when one electron gains an energy when a potential difference of 1 volt is applied. Okay, so it is the energy gained by an electron when it is accelerated by a potential difference of 1 volt. So the answer is 1 electron volt is nothing but 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 joule. There are different ways by which we can emit, eject or pull out this electron from the metal surface. So one way is by thermionic emission. So as the term says, thermionic, thermo related to temperature. Okay, you take the example of filament in a bulb. How is light produced in a filament? When the filament is heated to a very high temperature like 2500 Kelvin to 3000 Kelvin, what happens? Electrons gain that energy from the heat and it breaks the bond and comes out of the metal surface. So electrons from the metal surface can come out when you are providing heat to the metal surface. That kind of emission of electron is called thermionic emission. And you can see in triodes and cathode ray tubes which we use in TV, all have this thermionic emission. Okay, then another method is by applying a very strong electric field between the electrodes. You can see the range is 10 raised to 8 volt per meter. So very high electric field is given to the metal electrodes so that electrons gain energy from that electric field and comes out of the metal surface. This you can see in field emission electron microscope. Okay, then the third method is when light of a suitable frequency illuminates a metal surface. That means when it is allowed to fall on a metal surface, it is found that electrons are emitted from the metal surface. And since here, see, electrons are emitted because of light incident on it, we call these emitted electrons as photoelectrons. Electrons ejected due to light. And this phenomena of emission of light is called photoelectric effect. So as you can see here, this is the metal surface which has free electrons on that, and light of a particular frequency falls on the metal surface, and as soon as you can see that electrons from the metal surface are ejected out. So let us see how this photoelectric effect was discovered. It was Heinrich Hertz who first observed this photoelectric effect. While he was doing experiments to produce electromagnetic waves using a discharge tube, what he found out is that sparks, or the high voltage sparks which were detected near the detector lobe, got enhanced or brightened. Here he used a circular detector, and when ultraviolet radiations are allowed to fall on it, this high voltage spark got enhanced or brightened. So what he found out is that when light falls on this emitter plate, somehow the electrons are gaining energy from that light and comes out of the metal surface and has escaped into the space near the collector plate. That is why the spark got enhanced or brightened. After Heinrich Hertz, Hallward and Leonard took the studies further, and they also have done a lot of experiments to confirm this photoelectric emission. So what Leonard observed was that when UV radiations are allowed to fall on the emitter plate of a evacuated discharge glass tube, suddenly a current is registered in the external circuit. So as soon as the UV radiation falls on the emitter plate, current starts flowing in the external circuit. This is what Leonard observed. So how could you explain this phenomena? What happens when light falls on the metal plate, and why we can register a current in the external circuit? There is nothing but the electrons on the emitter plate has absorbed energy from the light falling on it and emitted, and the electrons are emitted. So these emitted electrons, since they are negatively charged and the collector electrode is kept at a positive potential, what will happen? The electrons will move towards the collector electrode, and this flow of electron causes a current to flow in the external circuit. What Hallward did in 1888 is that he again undertook the study of this photoelectric effect by using zinc plate. And this zinc plate is connected to an electroscope. You know what is an electroscope, right? It's used to detect charges on a body. Zinc plate, when it was negatively charged and connected to the electroscope, and the UV rays are allowed to fall on the zinc plate, what happened is that it becomes neutral. And when a positively charged zinc plate is connected to the electroscope and ultraviolet radiations are allowed to fall on the zinc plate, what he observed is that it positive charge got enhanced. So how do you explain this? It is nothing but when light UV rays falls on the zinc plate, emission of electrons takes place. So from the negatively charged zinc plate, electrons are emitted and it becomes neutral. So emission of electron is actually the explanation for this discharging as well as enhancing or becoming negatively charged zinc plate. So again, it's a confirmation that when light falls on a zinc plate, electrons are emitted. And after the discovery of these electrons in 1897 by J.J. Thomson, it became clear that these negatively charged particles which are coming from the emitter plate in the discharge tube is nothing but electrons. And the energy of the incident light causes these electrons to be emitted or ejected from the metal plate, emitter plate. Why these electrons are moving towards the collector plate? Have you thought about that? Since what is the charge of the electron? Charge on the electron is negative. So the electrons which are negatively charged will move towards the positively charged collector plate, which is the anode. Then another important observation they have made while doing these experiments is that even though we allow light to fall on the metal surface, this emission of electrons will happen only for a particular frequency. When the frequency of the incident light is lower than that frequency, no photoelectric emission was observed. That means there is a minimum value or minimum frequency required for the incident light to emit electrons from the metal surface. So if the frequency of the incident light is less than that minimum frequency, no photoelectric emission is observed or no electrons are emitted. And this minimum frequency which is required for this photoelectric emission, that is called threshold frequency. Okay, so as I told you before, not all frequencies can produce photoelectric emission. When light is incident on the metal surface, the frequency of that light should be above this minimum frequency, that is the threshold frequency. And this threshold frequency depends on the nature of the material of the emitter plate which we use. So that means it is different for different metals. From all these observations and experiments by various scientists from Heinrich Hertz, Leonard and Hallberg, we can conclude that, or we can define this photoelectric effect as the phenomenon of emission of photoelectrons from the surface of metals when radiation of suitable frequency is incident on it.